Everyone, it's 4:30, Monday, November 20th, 2017, and we'll call this meeting of the Fergus Falls City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Rachel is not here, Rupert not here, Thompson.
Here.
Jennison is not here, Speedo.
Here.
Hicks.
Yep.
Cameron.
Here. There's Mr. Rachel's is here as well.
We have a quorum.
So we have a quorum.
You're waiting for me?
No, we didn't wait.
The items on the agenda today is a discussion on city boards and commissions, and there's a number of different questions on our agenda that we will ask. But maybe I thought maybe a good way to start would be just have our city attorney and our city administrator give us some high-level overview. But maybe Ralph, would you want to just talk to us about the statutory requirements and the charter and the code and what the role of the community code in those?
Sure, I would be happy to. Thank you. Before you is a list of the various committees that perform various functions within the city. And we're required by statute to have certain types of committees, one of those being the Board of Zoning and Adjustment, which kind of is also very similar to the Planning Commission, but they have separate functions, but those are required by state statute that if we have zoning, we have to have a committee set up to address zoning issues, and that's primarily the purpose of the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning and Adjustment. Because we have a public library, we're required also to have a library board, and which is what we have. Because we're a charter city, we're required to have a charter commission. And the other statutorily required board would be the Housing and Redevelopment Authority. So given those boards, those are boards that we are required by statute to have as part of our of the boards that assist the city. But you'll see that there's a lot of other boards out there. And the list of current boards, some of those are set in city code because we've been requested to draft ordinances that establish these boards by city code. Some of them are what we would call ad hoc committees that are just more or less formed to address specific issues. And then there's also some boards with a common interest to the city, such as the PEG Access and Convention and Visitors Bureau and Economic Improvement Commission, Senior Citizen Board. And then there's these other specialized boards, such as the liaison to the golf board and the liaison to the hockey board. So we've been looking at some of these. There's a lot of people that have to be appointed by the mayor to serve on these boards. And the question that's been posed is whether it makes sense to consolidate any of these boards. Do we need all of these boards? Is there a better way to get some of the information for these boards before the council? I know some of these boards are wondering what their function is and what their purpose is. And I think in some aspects that some of the issues that are presented to the council could go before some of these boards for the public input and for the board to provide you input in regards to their recommendations, which may help you address some of these issues as well. So in every year, the beginning of the year, I think the mayor is required to appoint members to the board, and we're coming up to the January 1st. We'll be here before we know it. And so this is probably a good time to have a discussion as to how you'd like to proceed with the boards. You can keep things the way they are. You can change things if you want. You can eliminate some. You can consolidate others, or do nothing. So that's kind of what we wanted to present to the council today, to have a discussion on what makes the most sense moving forward with these boards.
Your Honor, members, I'll just further the discussion that Rolf just started and just say that the impetus for the discussion tonight is that we've heard from various members of our committees that they aren't sure what their mission is or what their role is. We haven't done a good job of, admittedly haven't done a good job of orientating the boards and really charging them with what their roles are. And so we need to figure out a way to better do that. We've had poor attendance, and a lot of our boards actually have not met quorum for several months, and which just makes it hard to do business. They're simply wasting the time of the people who do show up and not able to conduct business. So we have to figure out a way to encourage better volunteerism and get the commitment there and the attendance there. And then finally, just wanting to look at an efficiency standpoint. Most, if not all of these boards are staffed by city staff. Some have council liaisons, and there's a lot of time that's put forward for some of these boards, especially boards that aren't getting quorum. And just wanting to see if there's any ways that we can identify that there's efficiencies in the process, whether that be through eliminating boards that don't serve a purpose any longer, or by combining boards. And the one thing I will say is I've spent quite a bit of time, and Lynn has as well, looking at other cities and talking to other cities about how they do it. And what I will say is that there isn't a single city that does it the same way as another city. And there isn't a single solution that has risen to the top to be the perfect solution. So this is kind of one of those deals where it's always a moving target. You just need to continue to evolve and try to get them as productive and efficient as you can. But there hasn't been a model that's been proven to be perfect thus far that we found. And so keep that in mind as we discuss this. It's really a unique thing to Fergus Falls, just like every city has the boards that are unique to them and what they do. And what works here may not work somewhere else and vice versa. So with that said, these are the questions in front of you on tonight's agenda are the questions that we identified that may be helpful for us in pulling together a framework. We've thought a lot about this, like I said, and we've talked a lot about this, but would like a little bit of direction and insight from the council so we can pull all this together and bring back a recommendation to the council. At the end of the day, our goal is to revitalize our committees, to get them working, and to have them provide valuable and useful information to the council and city staff and decision making. So I will stop there, and hopefully we can have a good discussion.
And I'll just add real briefly, it's a continuation in a way of the discussion we had 2 weeks ago about our committees of this council, how we make the most of everyone's time, because we're all busy. We want to make sure that those committees that we have, whether it's the council committees or the volunteer committees in the community, are making the most of everyone's time. And also the second thing is, I think Lynn has indicated that we want to do a better job of having orientation for the committees starting in January as we roll out the committees for the 2018 year. So this is giving staff the direction of what those committees will be, what we'd like to see, and what expectations we as a council have, so everyone's on the same page. So is that fair, Lynn? Is that accurate?
Yep.
All right.
We want them to feel useful and.
Sure. And I think
We want to help them, but we need your help to guide that, or give us a direction of how to proceed.
so. Okay.
Your Honor.
Yes.
In addition to this list, obviously we've also got the Port Authority. Then there's the Minnesota Western Industries, and then the business development one. What's the business development one that approves the loans?
Right, business development of Fergus Falls.
Yeah.
Western Minnesota Industries is an independent nonprofit. They maintain separate bank accounts.
Right.
So
okay.
how they are considered is.
Yeah.
And
But we attend those meetings, or invite?
We have provided some administrative support. Yeah.
So then it's kind of a other than in that
Yeah,
case. then.
another other.
So, and I'm just trying to get all the committees listed. So,
yeah, I don't think this is an exhaustive list.
Right.
I think all of you are appointed to various boards or committees in your role as council members, and you'll know if they're not on here, but you're
Yeah.
right, this probably isn't fully exhaustive.
Sure. Okay, so, and I know there's members in the audience too who have input here, so as we go through this discussion, if you have something, just make sure you get my attention, and we'd like to get that input as well. But does anyone have, I think it's important when we talk about the purpose of the boards and the commission, that as a council, we're on the same page. What are we expecting of these boards and commissions? Are we bringing things to them that then they bring back to us, or are we expecting them to have the issues before them? To come up with those ideas. So this is meant to just be an open discussion, so if anyone has any thoughts on any of those first, I think A and B can be, we talked about together, but the expectations of the advisory boards and the purpose of the regular boards and commissions.
Your Honor, which boards here are the ones that weren't well attended, or what ones that need to be, I guess, probably addressed first here?
Sure.
Yeah, I think, I'll take a stab at that. I think all of them probably need to be improved in the sense that we need to do the better orientation. So that's maybe the first part to your question, but right now, the Park and Rec Board has had poor attendance. It's a 5-member board, and we've gone a few months without getting quorum. A wide variety of these commissions or committees maybe meet once a year. I won't name them by name, but, and then,
Can everyone speak in their microphone? It's really hard to hear tonight.
okay. And then, you know, some of the things that we've looked at as staff is, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to combine some of these committees. You know, for example, the Park and Rec Board could be an umbrella committee for like the Natural Resources Committee or the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. So, and then if any staff member staffs a board and they have issues with attendance or other thoughts, feel free to speak up. But those are primarily some of the issues. The boards and commissions aren't meeting on a regular basis. They don't have set meetings. And some of them, like I said, do have the attendance issues.
Would it make sense to go through to your question, Darren, and any council member or staff that has interaction with that committee can let you know what the status of that committee is?
And/or maybe what it is.
What it is?
What do they do?
Sure. Does that make sense? Is that all right with everyone?
I guess, Ben, one
Yeah.
thing that concerns me is that they're not there at the meetings. I think there should be something in there that says if they miss 2 or 3 consecutive meetings, that they'll be replaced.
Is there anything currently that talks about attendance or feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah, Your Honor, members, there, in city code, it does call for the ability for the council to remove somebody, or for the board to remove somebody if they have, I think it's 3 consecutive absences, or if, you know, conduct is that of such that they should be removed. So there is the ability to remove people from the boards if the attendance is poor, but we have not done that.
We've never done that that I know of anyway. I've been here quite a while.
Well, it seems to me, and I'm not picking on any board, but, you know, the Park and Rec Board should be a board that meets and makes recommendations to the council, and we need to make sure that board,
I would agree.
I mean, that's an important board. Not that they're all not important, but maybe we can take that, maybe we need to enforce that more, Jim, I'd make a suggestion that we consider the Board of Zoning and the Planning Commission, and we look at combining those into one board that has, takes on the roles of both of those committees, but if any staff has any thoughts on that. If we're having a difficult time getting people to show up to meetings, I feel like I'm just
Yeah, we're not.
echo chamber right now. But I know that's something that's been discussed, I think, even at the council level, a little bit of combining some of these
Yeah.
boards. But that's one recommendation I would ask staff to come back and comment on, is combining the planning and the zoning, what that would mean to the makeup and how that would affect. Maybe let's just go down these roles, and either staff or council that has a connection can talk about where they feel that committee's at. Is that fair enough? So Airport Advisory Committee, Anthony.
I mean, it meets probably, I would say, 3 times a year probably at the most, maybe once a quarter. I mean, generally there isn't a lot to do.
They meet as needed, if you will? or
Yeah,
there's-
yeah. I mean, typically, you know, the thing that's kind of happened obviously has been obviously snow removal equipment, and then some runway repairs where there's been FFA and Minnesota grants that have been available, but and there's discussion about obviously hangar and improvement of the airport, but it doesn't have a lot of money, and everything out there costs a lot of money.
But they get together as needed.
Yep. And the attendance, I would say, the key ones are there every time.
How many are on that board? Do you know?
In terms of, this guy,
Five-member board.
5-member? Thank you.
and
All right.
and they're all typically flyers. That's
Our full cost are 5 members for every board, other than the Public Safety Advisory has 3 and Planning Commission has 7. It's 5 for the rest at this current time.
Thank you.
Okay. Bicycle and pedestrian, I know there's people in the audience. Staff, is it, Brian, do you attend those meetings? And well, attendance is good at those?
Yeah,
Meetings.
quorums meets monthly, so, yes.
It's true.
It's true.
We've met for 2 years, had I think 2 meetings, maybe where we haven't had a quorum. Otherwise, right now, we are working with some membership issues, people, job changes, life changes. So we're at 3 members right now. We had some people kind of on deck to join. And but with this, we decided to just hold off on having a December meeting and wait to see how this all plays out.
Sure. Okay, thank you, Jake. Board of Zoning and Adjustments?
That we always have, that has 5 members. Typically, we always have a quorum of 3. That's meets as needed, so that would be a really good fit to combine with the planning commission.
So you would support
I would
that
support
as
that,
staff? Okay. HPC, Heritage Preservation Commission. That's Gordon's doing that.
I don't think there's been any issues with that board that I'm aware of. They had a fairly good attendance.
Okay. Human Rights Commission, I know Tom is on that, and he's ill this evening. Michelle's here. I know you guys have, is it fair to say you've kind of struggled with your role as far as what the city's expecting of you?
Well, I mean, we are just getting started, so we just formed last January. So I think we're still trying to figure out how we fit in or how we can be useful to the council. Attendance has been, I'd say like half and half. Like we're more likely to meet bi-monthly than monthly. So.
Do you have a staff liaison?
No.
No, okay. Library board, I could speak to that one. That, with the exception of me, everyone attends regularly. I try to get there when I can, but that's a tough time on Mondays. But that board is strong.
What do you got going on?
He's making dough.
Yeah.
Literally.
But that's a strong board. I think that Aaron was at City Hall. Aaron Smith, the library director, was at City Hall today to reiterate that point, that she felt that board is, in its current structure, is strong. Okay, Park and Rec Board.
That's the board we've really struggled with. Because, people are busy and some of the members are struggling with signing city email addresses and checking that as they need to.
When is
That's
it?
a good point. No, go ahead, John.
When does that board meet? Is it that at lunch?
Yeah, it's a new meeting.
Has that seemed to have been an issue with some of these boards, this communication with the city email? I see people on the boards out there shaking their heads. So,
is that the time to raise the question of why can't we go to Microsoft Outlook?
We can bring that up with our IT department. We have talked, I know Tom Roofer brought that up one time too, and talked with our IT, I believe, but some of it is with security issues, and then others, I mean, we will spend more on Outlook, I guess, licenses per whatnot, but, I mean, we can look at it, put it together, what that would be, and,
It's certainly, I mean, if we're struggling to communicate, our whole, our whole kind of like being is about communication. So if we struggle to communicate, I must admit, I mean, I picked mine up through my Google account, but that's as poxy as the thing that the city uses. So, and obviously I'm a dinosaur, so I like Microsoft Outlook. But I think it's something we should look at. I mean, especially in light of, if people out, like if you guys can't, if you struggle to log on, Jake's tech savvy, so I got no hope.
Yeah, I think that,
Be able to route email through a different system.
sure, but I think, and that's what I do. However, I think that's what Anthony says he does through Google, but then I think we're probably avoiding these simple securities that we're trying to
Well, we
justify in
have
the first
security,
place,
and
right?
then, Rolf, we have the whole public data laws that, because we're playing in the city environment, it has to be, I mean, we have to account for our,
We have to preserve a record. Emails is a record, record that has to be preserved.
We can do that with Outlook. Most
I'm sure.
most legal firms use Outlook. I mean, it's not an insurmountable hill to climb.
But it's necessary.
Yeah, it's a necessary hill, granted.
So that's, I'm gonna take it, that's one of the
Be a
recommendations
recommendation
to the
that staff look at,
so I'll pull that together with our IT department and come up with what that would mean and what it would take. So
Thank you very much, Bill.
you are so welcome. You sound surprised, Anthony.
Just one last question on the park board. Is this the 2017 issue, or has this been happening for,
Yeah, it's basically just been this year.
because I remember in the past, it seemed like that board was well attended.
I have some packets I cannot open up at home.
Planning Commission?
Yeah, that one's,
Yeah, we've had some attendance issues,
yeah,
but
we
we've,
had some attendance issues there for individuals not showing up. That's a board of 7. That, like I had suggested, might with the board of zoning, some of those members from the board of zoning brought onto the planning commission would be nice. And then too, the communication and knowing the importance of what the planning commission is for. So that's for flats, on unit developments, understanding what's being reviewed, and that is a crucial role for development of our community.
Public Arts Commission?
I've staffed one meeting of that so far, and the group seems committed. They have some projects. They'll actually be before the city council in December to ask for a carryover of some dollars from this year's budget to next year to do some maintenance work on a particular piece of art in the community. And then they're working on getting proposals on a comprehensive public art policy and plan. So they, I think, are engaged. The meeting I was at had full attendance. So that's my experience with them, and they are looking towards other work that they can be doing.
And is that one that was, before you, Gordon, was assigned to that,
He was.
to that commission?
Yeah.
Maybe that's another thing that we'd have recommend to staff to give us their recommendation on, because it sounds like Human Rights doesn't have a dedicated staff member. It sounds like PED does, and they meet regularly. So the amount of time, how to tackle that? Like, what's the proper amount of staff time to dedicate towards these committees? Would that be an appropriate way to say it?
Sure.
So that it can feel like we can be, they're effective, but, it's a realistic amount of time for staff to put into it as well.
and that, Your Honor, members, that is the expectation of staff, is to be, I mean, the city code states that myself or a designee should attend all of these committee meetings, and obviously that's a daunting task for one person, but it should be the expectation of staff that we are present at the committee meetings, and that's why if we could condense, just for an efficiency standpoint, that would be helpful.
And then it would ask, would that be those that are in code, or, could some of them be ad hoc? I'm just thinking ad hoc, so that they could, have the existence of the committee, but it's not requiring staff to attend meetings all day, every day.
Yeah, I would defer to Rolf, I guess, to how we'd address that via code, because
Well, I mean, some of these committees have been established by ordinance. You can undo them if you want. You can combine them if you want. You can change the name or the function if you want. Just because they're listed in the code book just gives them a little bit higher status as opposed to one that's just simply been appointed. But you can, what you've done, you can undo. So it's not hard.
All right, we'll move along, and, so you guys are good on the Public Safety Advisory Committee, right? Sister City Commission, I think that's one that we need to evaluate the role and how it relates to the entire community, and how, I don't think there's a staff, I don't think there's a lot of affiliation right now, other than when an event's gonna happen, so that's, I think, one we can take a look at, defining their role more specifically. Charter
I mean, is that one that you could combine with like Public Arts Commission? I mean, it's,
Or heritage, yeah.
Heritage preservation.
or heritage preservation. Yeah.
Preservation probably would be
Yeah.
better.
I mean, just slice it into something else.
Take that and make a recommendation. Charter Commission?
Yeah. They're attended very well. Pretty much everyone always shows up. Last year, they only met once, but this year, they're meeting now every month because now they're undergoing an extensive review of the charter, so they're back working hard. So I wouldn't suggest any changes in that regard.
Okay. The Natural Resources Advisory Committee, Guy, you attend those meetings?
Yes.
And they've been fairly well
They've been
attended?
pretty well attended, yeah.
Okay. And they meet monthly?
Yep, they've been meeting monthly, struggled a bit at, what the objectives are of the group.
Sure. And Karen, do you have anything to add? I mean, do you feel like you've kind of made progress on that?
I do, yeah, we did struggle a bit, and I think part of that is because natural resources are huge, complex issues, so we want to cover everything, but that's not realistic, so you have to dial it down and select one or two small things, and I think we're getting there, where we're focusing in, and we are well attended and meet monthly, so I think we have a lot of support within the committee of what we're doing, so. I feel good about it.
Sure, okay. Now, that's a committee that, if it doesn't have code status, technically, we don't have to have staff, but what's the right relationship is what I'm getting at, whether it's bike ped or the natural resources, when we bring staff in, because I know having staff there is important. Maybe that's something we could look at, have a recommendation of just how to tackle that issue. Brian, did you have something to add?
Yeah, with the Natural Resource Committee, it's a good committee. But is what I've been experiencing since inception of this program, there's a lot of material that overlaps with our state federally mandated MS4 program. It's very consistent with a lot of components of the MS4 right now. That, in fact, we've been struggling, well, for many years, just implementing the program, the MS4. But annually, there's a lot of stuff where we're supposed to be reporting to the state about it. And
That's stormwater, correct?
stormwater, public outreach components, everything. But the stormwater program is quite encompassing too. Now, granted, there are some other things that are not, but what I've noticed so far, there's a lot of overlap. And that was the whole part of the stormwater fund too. That was one of the impetus for that, was to meet programs like the MS4 too as well. All that mandates we have to comply with. But there is regulatory requirements already in place that.
So we don't want to duplicate, we don't have overlap.
Well, there's got to be some
But with-
consistency somewhere, so I'm not spending, staff time, what we have to report on, when other committees might be doing it too. I think we're there, but there just seems to be some overlap.
Making sure that committee is defined. Rod, you're on that committee, would you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, Your Honor.
How you feel like they're.
I think it's doing well. I think we are trying to define better our purpose since it's brand new. And we want to, in line with the vision that you've also brought with being the mayor. But I would say that the Green Steps program is well supported by the committee's larger mission statement, and it will help us move forward with the next steps on that. And so we will be adding to that, I believe, in the future in a more cohesive way. And we will be bringing some new things forward just to approve for the execs on the committee in terms of, what should our focus be in this next year primarily, based on our resources and what we think is important. So you'll be hearing more from that. I think we haven't decided on that yet.
Well, just talking with staff, talking with the co-chairs of that committee, and then hearing from you, it sounds like it sounds like we can get that committee to have a focus that's making the most of their time and not duplicating staff, and just fine tuning that focus of that committee to be effective. Is that fair? Say on that one? Okay, beautiful Fergus Falls. Karen, are you still involved with beautiful Fergus Falls at all? Do they still?
We have not met for a while.
Patrick.
I'm the chair of beautiful Fergus Falls.
Really? Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, that's all right. I was hiding behind Karen.
I didn't see you behind Karen.
We had two main projects in 2017. One was the butterfly on the bridge.
Yes.
And the other one is the Wright Park plan, which happens to be on your agenda this evening for the regular meeting. They both turned out terrific. Karen's correct. We have not met for a while because most of our energy got channeled into the Wright Park plan over the last, let's say, 2-3 months. With the holidays approaching now, I doubt we're going to meet again for the remainder of 2017. And my tenure as chair ends at the end of 2017. But I would like to get us going again in January with a new chair and find some new projects.
Thanks, Patrick. All right.
Your Honor,
Yes.
do you have the potential of a new chair?
I'm going to be looking for people, so if you're interested, council member.
I'm just curious. I mean, is that a well-attended committee? I mean, overall?
We're a pretty informal group, so we have not even imposed a rule onto ourselves as to what constitutes a quorum.
Right.
So there are probably about 16 people on the email list, and typically we get about 6 or 7 showing up, which I know sounds bad, but we don't have a minimum threshold for a quorum, so whoever shows up gets to work on stuff.
And that staff usually is Gordon been a part of that in the past?
Gordon, Steve Plaza very often
Well.
comes to meetings. I think Brian may have come to a meeting on occasion.
I think it's important that one thing is if we make a recommendation from staff to some of these ad hoc committees, because I don't think there's anything wrong with not meeting every month, just meeting as a project comes up. But we just need to make sure we have clear expectations of what staff time is in relation to that committee. I think that would help a lot of this. Maybe, yes, Lynn?
Can I just bring up a point too, that with communication, that when some of these groups are meeting, that we're not aware of that, so we can't, if we don't have minutes or don't know when they're meeting, we can't give that information to the council either. A lot of the groups provide us minutes that we pass on to you, but that communication that would be needed from the groups letting us know you're meeting, we can post the agenda, we can comply with open meeting law, and then we can pass the meeting minutes on to the council members as well.
Sure. Yes, Rod?
One of the things I think we worked on with the Planning Commission was requesting that the chair would bring the council a summary of what they were working on, or and I'm wondering if we couldn't, depending on the value or the time that they meet, or the committee meets, its workload, if we could collect from the chairs periodically just a summary. I think for myself as a council member, I think that would improve our communication, and we'd also know what they were working on. And if beautiful Fergus Falls is working on something that the Natural Resources Committee is, we could talk together or something. Is that a reasonable suggestion?
Yeah, I think
Your Honor,
that's.
I would add to that maybe quarterly, something like that. As a
Quarterly now.
Okay.
I think we talked last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago. I think we spoke about having the chairs or a committee member reporting to the council, I think, for that communication directly, so that would help as well. But of quarterly updates if they don't have something.
Well, Your Honor, I was suggesting the chair so that we would know that there would be one person. If they designate someone else, I think that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But if the chair knows it's their role to make sure that reporting is done, then we can say we know for sure how it's going to flow. And they wouldn't have to do it, they could just designate.
Yeah, I just meant in addition to that, also when there's something coming from the recommendation, not just the quarterly
them,
reports,
yeah.
have them, have more of a presence at the
Oh, I see,
council
sure.
meeting, rather than just staff. But I think that can be in addition. Yes, Jim?
Your Honor, would that be at a council meeting or at this meeting? Because I thought we said at a council meeting, we're gonna try and have things that we make a decision on there. A good place for them to report would be to this meeting, I think, committee of the whole.
Yeah. I think anytime a recommendation, like let's say the planning commission's making a recommendation, whether,
Recommendation, then it comes to the council, but if it's just to let us know what they're working on, I think committee of the whole.
That's a good point.
Would be a good place to do it.
It's a good point.
Well, yeah, I envision those updates being in writing, so we could just distribute that electronically.
However,
Yeah.
Your Honor, however, I actually wonder if it wouldn't be so bad that, I mean, technically at the moment, there's probably 20 odd commissions, maybe we should slot them in, for like, maybe as Jim suggests, the committee as a whole, just to give a 10-minute review, one, because we have 26 meetings a year, just one every meeting, so that we also get to see the chairman, chairperson, see who it actually is,
Good idea.
That's a good idea.
just literally so that, they know who we are equally as well, so we're not all strangers.
At a committee of the whole meeting
Yeah,
on Wednesday.
I mean, literally a 10-minute kind of overview, as you say, especially if we're going to try to define, and that might help them have that dialogue about what do you expect of us as a commission.
Yep. Well, we're getting some good ideas here. Okay, so PEG Access Convention of Visitors, Economic Improvement Commission, Housing Redevelopment Board Authority, Senior Citizens Board, these are all boards and commissions that exist outside of the city, if I believe, right? But we just have liaisons to those boards. Does anyone have any thoughts on whether or not we should have, or should or shouldn't have ex officio members on any of those boards? Are we okay on those? PEG Access, you're okay there?
Yep, that's fine with me.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I mean, we had talked at one point about, and I don't know, we kind of didn't really come up with how all of it would be practical or not, but the EIC and the Port Authority and the Business Development of Fergus Falls, whether we could get that combination down at least from 3 to 2, and have some, at the moment, the Port Authority Board is all council, is that sort of something that we could look at to, because again, that's reducing staff time and some of the things are, duplicated.
Yeah, maybe a good idea would just to have that discussion come back as the wrap up to this, the pros and the cons of having. Yeah, the Port Authority, I can see both sides of that. It can be a very powerful board and to have non-elected officials, but if it's streamlined and we can make better use of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily advocate that it's not, it would be a combination of,
Right, elected and
some,
non.
yeah, elected and non.
Your Honor,
Yes,
I serve on the community ed, which is, I believe, in this category, boards of the common interest of the city.
Community ed, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there are, if we look at that list, there's a number of them. And we can have that, part of that discussion when we get there too, but we'll make note of that. The community ed is another one of common interest. We'll see. And then the golf board and the hockey association. I think it's important that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good thing to have somebody there from the council, because it's a lot of questions get asked your way, and then you can direct them to the right way. We can answer back to the staff mostly. So I think that's a very, very important thing.
In both of those, we actually have money invested in both the organizations, so I think we absolutely need to be.
And property.
Yeah, and property, yes, yeah.
One thing I want to say, altogether, we should, the lease is up on the golf course next year, and so we got to start working on a lease, and we're going to shorten that up a bunch. There's a bunch of stuff in there that really should be taken out, and some stuff should be added, but make it a little more compact, so just throw that out there.
Your Honor?
Yeah.
Scott and Jim, do staff attend those boards then, or just you two?
No, just me.
Yeah.
And you're the hockey, it's golf and
We-
hockey.
We have
correct?
Dave Umlauf is usually there, or Steve Plaza, one of the two, at the hockey meeting.
Mr. Mayor, and we do about monthly, maybe we're getting to be every other month, where staff and then members of the golf board and council member ratios, we will meet and go over, certain things that are happening with buildings or whatnot, to kind of keep our finger on the pulse there too. So those are just meetings we set up just to keep communication going that we need, so.
The biggest thing is just to watch the budget, to kind of, so it doesn't get overlooked.
Well, have that communication, like you say, too, just, you guys can have a feeling for what's going on in those, before it gets.
Your Honor?
Oh, yes, right.
Before we leave the general discussion of the boards, or if we finish, I think it should be noted, and I think Mr. Hurley noted it in his letter to us, but as the boards look at their recruitment, I believe that members of the public have also mentioned to me that at times they don't know that that position's open or don't know what the mission of the board is. And I think we could augment our availability of those positions by having a way that's accessible for people to see when a position might be open and to see what it entails to some degree. I think that would be helpful for the staff to bring us some recommendations on wider net, maybe, wider net or something.
We did the application, so it's a little more of, what do you bring to the table? I mean, something that, all the appointments go through, the mayor makes appointments and you approve them. So we did, redesign the application, just knowing when there is openings. I just found out about some openings tonight, wasn't aware of. So we can get the word out on those, it's just having that communication going both ways. We're happy to get people in there, to let the mayor know that there's an opening, that he can make a recommendation with appointments. Trying to get a more formalized process, it's just not as, hey, are you interested? It's more of a, what do you bring, how can you help serve?
And I think those are excellent. And then I think Mr. Hurley also suggested social media. And I know that a lot of word gets spread that way, and I think that would be a way for us to, in addition to the, the application, prior to that, to get the word out, to use Facebook or something.
Okay, great. Yes.
And to that point, the Lead Fergus Falls, a committee under Forward Fergus Falls, has brought this up as well, and they'd be happy to help spread the word when it's known that there's openings, to push out through that to get broader engagement from the community. So that would be one avenue to utilize.
Maybe we can think about doing that as we look towards January for, a lot of those spots are gonna be up, and the ones that aren't attending the meetings are just gonna get filled with people that will and want to be there, so. Maybe December's a good time to do that. Okay, so, we maybe have gone through that discussion, we've maybe not eliminated as many staff as we'd like. But we have,
Not yet.
Well, would there,
but we have combined a couple, and we're getting there, we're gonna have some updates, and, yeah, Justin.
other than the discussion, would there be any recommendation staff talked about consolidating a few of these? Are there any other pathways that these cross that there could be more consolidation than I think we only talked about two, didn't we?
If you guys are supportive of consolidation, we certainly will look at ways in which we can do that, or bring back suggestions.
I would just be for the suggestions, because I don't serve on all the committees and I don't do the day in, day out like you guys do. So if you think there'd be a good cohesive mesh, I would be encouraged to see what your opinions would be of that.
Yeah, I think we can bring that back for some discussion, because I
Yeah.
think that, and then that's why I brought up too, the staff interaction with those different committees, and make sure that, because if we have a group of people that's, passionate about being advocates for a particular issue, I think we need to utilize that. Now, the difference between being advocates and activists, we could all have that discussion at a different time. But I think we need to have that discussion, and maybe what staff's role is there. I certainly don't want to turn people away who have a passion to serve the city. Yes, Rob?
Yeah, it just came to mind. I was at the coalition of the Greater Minnesota Cities in Alec, and I sat with Little Falls, and they bring greetings to you, Andrew. I think you know the city administrator there.
I do well, yes.
But they said they would like to be a sister city to us, and because of their development of trails and what we've done, and they would like to share some ideas and maybe work together. So I wanted to relay that, not, as an information item. But it does make that committee or that commission seem valid if there's somebody that wants to, cooperate with us.
Sure, certainly. Okay, it's 5:15, so we're gonna wrap this meeting up, I think, but just briefly, Lynn, just go over just the logistics of the length of terms. Is there two?
Right now, there's 2-year terms. And you can reapply.
There are no term limits currently, correct?
We probably should have term limits just so that we keep things fresh and revitalized and have a mandatory, whether it's a year break or some sort of break so that we are getting new ideas and new bodies in.
We don't currently we don't enforce a term limit, correct?
No, not since we changed the code, was it maybe 2014 or so we kind of looked at this last. Those were 3-year terms, now it's 2 years. And we looked at the membership at that time.
So if anyone has any thoughts on any of these issues, just get them to Lynn, and I think Lynn will bring back, our staff will bring that back as part of the recommendation for us to act on. The only one that I would add to that list is city residency requirements. I know some of those committees have residency requirements, some don't. Some people live just outside the city limits, so anyway, maybe we just need to make it clear, so it's clear in the code whether we do or we don't require city residency. Anyone else have anything to add? All right.
I'll just real quickly, item E, how items are brought from committees to the council.
Oh, yes.
I put that on there, we talked a little bit earlier about having the chairs come, and I think that's a great idea. And the reason I put this question on there is I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention that we've had instances where committees will make motions that the city council should take up X, Y, and Z when it's not something that has gone through staff, or it's something that they've talked to staff about and it hasn't been brought to that level. And I just want to get your guys' opinions. If a board and commission were to just simply make a motion or a resolution that the city council must address, this particular instance was regarding the Kirkbride. And, as the person responsible for setting the agenda, if it's not something that is probably appropriate for the city council to be discussing, what latitude do you feel that we have to dismiss that motion and not put it on the agenda? Because I don't want, these committees should be tasked with what they're tasked with and not simply a way for people to get a topic that they feel passionately about or that hasn't gone their way in front of the city council. Just throwing it out there for everybody's just understanding that that's happened, and I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on it.
I believe you and the mayor make up the agenda, so you have the leeway to do that.
But I also think it's important to understand that these committees work at your pleasure and at your directive, and so if you don't want them coming back with some type of recommendation or don't authorize them, there's no really reason for them to be off on their own venture trying to come back with things to present to the council unless this is something that you want.
Right.
I think that's an important point, and maybe it's something that we can address in the orientation.
Mhm.
Clear expectations both ways of what we expect of them and what those committees expect of the council.
Because I would add, we don't want to, if they kind of have a valid point and then it gets blocked because staff don't, then I can assure you that the people will ring me or one of us up here, and they will say, well, we had this idea, but staff didn't take it anywhere. And so I think, and we want to encourage people to join these committees and get engaged, and if we're seen to block everything they come up with, then they'll take the position, well, there's no point in being on a committee because nothing ever happens.
That could be addressed with council involvement.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, or could it not be something, instead of discussing at the council action, because we had talked about that's going to be for decision-making only, I think they still have the benefit to come before the work session and, address that issue if there is an issue that they're passionate about, but I mean, I think it's not a way for them to get their stuff on the actual council agenda. I think there's other ways to address those things other than before it gets before our council meeting. I think a work session, or, you know, the community of the whole would be a good spot to do that.
All right. We'll be adjourned until 5:30.